Hey, what's up guys? It's Nick from Arch City Poker and ArchCityPLO.com, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to play in position, and we're going to use a hand history review to do that. So, local 1-2 game player who I deem as average, doesn't do anything particularly bad, doesn't do anything particularly spectacular. We are deep, he decides to make it 10 pre-flop. I call on the button with 10-9 suited. I could 3-bet this sometimes. I think his range is a little bit strong to attack in this position. I do like playing deeper in position, just taking a flop this time. I think that's totally fine. So we see a flop of 8-5 deuce rainbow. He decides to go ahead and lead for a larger sizing. Solvers, Snowy, they're going to probably like some raises. Yeah, so they say my move is wrong because I just called. But, players should not be c-betting on this type of texture from out of position this deep. They do not hit this texture hard enough, often enough. They're very often not going to be able to go for 3 streets of value. They're often also not going to be able to defend against, let's say, a raise and then a barrel and then another barrel. They're just going to have too many like one pair combos in their ranges. So this is a situation where I will sometimes raise. It depends on the player that's c-betting. If I think that they are capable of c-betting and then folding a lot, then I will raise a ton. But if I think that their range is pretty merged, meaning that they have nutty combos, but they also have like some combos in the middle of their range and then like some bluffs, I tend to attack a lot more often when they check to me, because then they don't implement any kind of balance. Their range is a lot weaker. So when they check, I tend to attack that range a lot harder. I think it's less risky to go ahead and actually just flat, which is what I in fact do. I have some backdoor opportunities here in the form of backdoor spades. I can try to start bluffing, backdoor straight draws that come in. I could turn a 10 or a 9 and have some showdown value. But I think I would like to call, see what he does on the turn. A lot of times they will c-bet flop, and then they'll let you know where they'll stand on the turn. So a nice card for all intents and purposes, a 7 of clubs comes in. I don't think my opponent really has like any like 8-7 suited from what I've seen. Maybe really not a whole lot of pocket 8s or pocket 7s for sets. Definitely no 9-6 suited, 6-4 suited, none of that. I think that this was a lot of overpairs, perhaps some overcards like ace king, king queen that decided to bet. But he does decide to check here. So I think a lot of players, I think a lot of you guys probably are capable of firing a bet here. And it's arguable that half pot to pot would work fine. I think where you want to take your game to the next level and how to essentially play in position, and especially when you're deep, making these opponents think that all of this money is going to be at risk possibly on the river. I like going ahead and overbetting here, knowing that it's perceived that I can have a lot of the nutty combos in my range now. Am I flatting pre-flop with 9-6 suited, 6-4 suited, 8-7 suited maybe some of the time? So I do have like some 2 pairs. Certainly I will have some sets that I've played this way, so I can have some combos, but I don't have the straights. The point is, though, is that 2 pairs and sets, I think they're really the same hands as straights at this point versus this player's range. So I like the overbet. I like to apply max pressure in this spot with the open-ender here. And, if I do get called, I have some equity to fall back on. If a brickish kind of card comes off, or a card that I think doesn't help his calling range, then I think it's a spot where I could bet again. But, I think a lot of you guys, if you have watched my channel for a while now, you probably have improved quite a bit. At least I hope so. But the next step in your game is to add some aggression like this. Think outside of the box. You don't have to bet only half pot or 2/3 pot or pot. You can go smaller than half pot in a lot of situations. You can go larger than pot in a lot of situations, and this is one of them. I simply just have the polarity advantage, meaning I have the nuts in my range. He doesn't, or doesn't have them as often as myself. So I'm allowed to go ahead and bet large like this. Now, to my surprise, they usually fold a lot to that bet, but he does call. This player has played with me quite a bit. He knows that I can get out of line, but I think he's getting really sticky here with like an overpair. It's possible that he has pocket 9s or pocket 6s for like a pocket pair and some kind of straight draw. The thing is, when I've seen him raise before, I don't see a lot of the middling pairs in his range. Like I said, pocket 7s, pocket 6s, pocket 5s. I think I've seen him limp call those quite a bit, so I really do not fear the 4 as far as him having like pocket 6s, 7-6 suited, ace-3 suited. I really don't think those are in his range. He checks, and that doesn't necessarily mean we don't need to look at this because we're thinking more exploitatively here. I'll get into this in a second, but his check doesn't necessarily mean that he never doesn't have combos that he's willing to play for stacks with, but it's going to be very rare. I also think he might lead here, sometimes thinking that this gets checked back a lot. Maybe not as often with me. I think these players think I think it's perceived that I'm willing to fire the river for them, and so I think they will check here quite a bit. The point is, though, I don't think he really has 6x in his range, and I think on the turn he might have played some of his better hands faster, like his rare sets that he might have. So I decided to overbet again, and it's certainly arguable that I could bet smaller and risk less and get him to fold some one-pair hands. I think Snowy was looking for a smaller bet in theory. Now, the reason that Snowy says this is that they're thinking in terms of game theory optimal play. They think that my opponent is balanced, that they can show up with strong combos on this board. If Snowy knew what we knew about this player's range, I think that Snowy would tell me to shove here, to be honest. But again, it's simply just because I have the nuts in my range and my opponent doesn't. And I don't really want to bet half pot here and make my opponent, possibly think about a crying call with a hand like pocket aces or some other combo like that. I really think it's like a lot of overpairs. But the point is, guys, and he did end up folding very, very quickly once I put all 515 in, or effectively 400. The point is, though, is how to play in position, understand texture, how it interacts with both of your ranges. If you're deeper, look to put your opponent to the test, especially on the turn and river, where there's going to be a lot of money at stake. They're going to be willing to peel some flops. They're going to be willing to bluff catch some smaller bets, but exploitatively, if we can get away with some larger bets, and if you think your population or opponent is getting kind of curious in spots like this, then of course we're going to want to balance it, and we're going to want to show up with some straights here. Obviously, if we're overbetting, I think we want to polarize to mostly straights. It's possible that if we think they never have 6x, then we could throw in some sets, but I think it's a spot where I probably just really have like straights and then bluffs. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions or comments about this hand, I know that this is a little bit probably unorthodox to some of you, probably seems maybe ambitious. Maybe it kind of frightens you to take lines like this. I think once you implement it a little bit more often, you'll start to feel more comfortable, and it'll just feel kind of second nature, and you'll know on textures like this and position when deep, you can really attack and put your opponents in a real bind. So like I said, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.